Hi y'all, Patrizio Murdaca here, Chief Web Developer at Drover Rideshare. Today I want to talk to you about UberPOOL. It's like carpool, but Uberfied. Uber, the popular rideshare service, has recently launched a product called UberPOOL within their app that now adds an additional hailing option to the traditional UberX, XL, Black, etc. With UberPOOL, a rider can elect to share the remaining seats in their vehicle with other riders along the course of their ride. So let me explain that better. Let's say you are a single person and you request an UberX. You get matched with a Nissan Altima. So now a Nissan Altima is a 5-person car with now 4 passenger seats, right? Because you take out the driver's seat, and then you're now 1 person riding in the Nissan Altima. So there are 3 remaining seats left in your Nissan Altima. With traditional UberX, you and your driver would stay together without anyone else in the vehicle. You would get to your destination, your Uber driver would drop you off, and then they would open their app to accept more rides. With UberPOOL, on that hypothetical Nissan Altima ride, other riders that are also participating in UberPOOL can actually be matched with you mid-ride and occupy those open 3 seats, or however many seats are open in your Uber ride. This is a feature that is being launched in very few cities just to start with. I think they're past beta testing, but it's definitely still in experimental stages, and it would only really work in very large cities with high demand. Fortunately, I was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania earlier this month, one of the few cities that they have launched UberPOOL in. And I believe for most of the time that I was there, I opted to use UberPOOL partly to check it out and partly for the reasons why I'm about to describe in this video. So I just wanted to make this video to provide my first-hand look into UberPOOL, this brand new feature that Uber's launching in select cities that will potentially soon make it to your market if it hasn't already. So, my basic takeaways. First of all, the only reason I even heard about UberPOOL was because I jumped into Uber from Google Maps, which I hardly ever do. When it, how it has like car, bicycle, walking, etc. When it listed like rideshare as an option, UberPOOL was generated in the list, and I saw the price range was significantly cheaper. So I said, okay, cool. So I tapped on that. The only problem was, at least on my personal phone, I use a Nexus 6 in Philadelphia with T-Mobile. The connection between Google Maps and Uber, the Uber app, was not very smooth. I had to actually close out both apps several times and then ultimately just go through the Uber app. Not that much of an inconvenience, but just saying. From there, it's also a little bit confusing. You still have to select UberX in the main, bottom panel, if you will, of the Uber app where you have the different Uber ride options. And then from there, when you put in your destination and everything, then it'll ask you, would you like to have UberPOOL, which will cost you this much, or would you like to use the traditional UberX, which will roughly cost you this much? And they're like side by side. And then from there you can choose it. So once you get used to the fact that the option doesn't really come up right away, and you get over that anxiety of like, am I using UberPOOL, am I using UberX, I don't know. Once you get past that, you have that option. Now comes what I really like about UberPOOL rather. Within that little dialog box that opens, there's 2 separate boxes, one for UberPOOL and one for UberX. The UberPOOL prices are phenomenal. First of all, instead of a traditional meter system, on the rider side at least, I'll get into what the driver experience is, but on the rider side, instead of it just being the traditional like meter system where you don't really know what your fare is going to be until you complete your ride and you look at your phone when you're already out of the car, as I'm sure many of you have experienced with Uber, you actually get a flat rate cost, not an estimate, a guaranteed flat rate cost of what your ride will be before you even request the Uber, which in my opinion I thought was phenomenal. Also, that flat rate cost was probably half, if not a third, as expensive as a traditional Uber ride would have been. So for example, I did a 9-mile ride from the UPenn campus to Penn's Landing by the Delaware River, on the Delaware River. That was only $4.20, and that was with me including a +1, a passenger. You can also opt for that. Like if your party has 2 or 3 people, for example, you enter that into the app, so that way the app knows how many seats are empty in the car still. But anyway, with me and a passenger, which they charge you an additional fee for, small but additional, it was only like $4.20. whereas a traditional Uber of that duration probably would have been over $12, I think would be fair to say, with like moderate to high traffic. So I thought that was really cool. You can't beat the price. Another fun thing about UberPOOL is that you usually get other people in your ride, which was really freaky, because usually if you're being transported somewhere with people you don't know, it's usually public transportation like a bus or a subway or a train. But to be in a space with people, and you already don't know the driver, but with other riders that you don't know also, at first it was a little awkward. It was like, oh no, there are so many people that I don't know in this car. But then it was kind of like, well, okay, well, we all don't know each other, so we might as well just kind of start having this huge, giant conversation that actually reduced some of the awkwardness of just trying to have a conversation with your individual driver, which I'm sure some of you have experienced before. So that was actually kind of nice. I met a lot of really cool, interesting, fun people that I shared Ubers with, and yeah, honestly, I can't report any negative experiences people-wise, that I wound up sharing the Uber with. At the very worst, we just didn't talk to each other really. But that part was enjoyable. One part that I didn't like about UberPOOL is that the routes weren't always efficient, meaning we sometimes wound up picking up another rider mid-drive that was, let's say, halfway towards my destination. But then it wasn't very clear, like, if the first rider gets dropped off first or the second rider gets dropped off first. So sometimes I experienced being the first person in the ride, but yet the last to be dropped off, which really didn't make much sense. So my, 10, 15-minute drive winds up being more like a 30-minute drive because all the add-on passengers that we picked up along the way got dropped off before me, which was kind of frustrating. Then I asked the drivers what they experienced driving for UberPOOL, because I thought to myself, well, sometimes on my rides, we didn't even pick anyone up. Like, I elected for UberPOOL, and I guess the way it works is if someone happens to hail the car within your vicinity, then they'll add on. But I suppose that doesn't happen. They're not just going to invent people to jump on with your ride. So I experienced several UberPOOL rides priced at UberPOOL levels in which no one else joined the ride. So I asked the driver, like, are you getting shortchanged by this? Like, I just paid $3.75 for like a 10-minute ride. And they explained to me, and I also did some research online, that as a driver driving for UberPOOL, you actually have the same user experience you do for UberX, meaning you do have a base fare, you do have your mile and time like meter system going within the app, and it's actually a little bit higher than the normal UberX meter prices, if you will, within the app. So for them, it doesn't make a difference if it's UberPOOL or not. If anything, they could stand to make more money by opting to do that, because by driving the same routes, picking up the same number of people or more people, they're making just a couple cents more per mile per minute. So I was happy to hear that, because it would have been frustrating to me if they had only made like the $3.75 for that ride. What Uber's actually doing is they're subsidizing the cost of those rides. So for example, my $3.75 ride, had that been where I took by myself, had that been UberX, it clearly would have been a lot more than $3.75, and they probably paid the driver more than $3.75. So I bet Uber is subsidizing the difference when those situations occur, basically taking a gamble on whether or not that UberPOOL car will be full of passengers paying a flat rate, if that makes any sense. Meaning, I paid my $3.75, but if we'd picked up 3 more people that were paying $3.75 along that route, and as UberPOOL gets more popular, that will probably be the case, well then Uber starts making more money from those flat rates, and then that contributes to the amount that they pay their metered drivers. Whereas now in these early stages, I personally experienced a lot of UberPOOL rides that probably costed Uber more than they charged me with my flat rate. And my best guess as to why they're doing this is just keep the costs down and encourage people to be open to the idea of sharing their car. My general thoughts on the program is I think it's great. I think it can only work in really large cities with lots and lots and lots of riders. But on the whole, it's even more environmentally efficient because it encourages less waste in terms of the fact that you have a 5-passenger vehicle that can hold 5 people. Let's fill it up with 5 people. I think that's pretty cool. And then the negatives that I described were really just kind of, perhaps that was just my opinion. Maybe other people wouldn't agree. Maybe other people would find different things they don't like about it. But in general, I think it's a pretty cool feature. As a rider, I loved how cheap the rides were. And perhaps Drover, one day when we get to the point of launching in those larger markets, will consider something similar. But until then, I've gotten some reports from the app development team here at Drover that I work closely with, and things are really underway. So we'll be doing some beta testing soon, and I'll keep you guys posted. And we'll do some feature videos with merchandise and talking about the app some more as it gets more developed. Until then, thank you. Have a great day. Bye.